All right, I am trying a new kind of video today, which is me talking through my painting process. So, I am painting this portrait of my partner, and I'm going to walk you through what I am doing. So, as I set up the palette, a little bit of background context is that I started to paint in 2020. I never thought of myself as a painter before that. Within about a year, I was doing commissioned animal portraits. Um, they were very photorealistic, but when I burnt out, I couldn't paint like this anymore. And that has turned out to be a blessing in disguise, although it was very hard because I was painting in a way that wasn't really about what was pleasurable for me, especially in the process of painting. And so I've really had to relearn to paint through orienting like fun and what feels interesting to me because that is how I have been able to rebuild my ability to paint. And you'll see behind me actually one of my abstract pieces. This was really my lifeline in the past year. I wanted to and missed painting portraits, but abstract work is what let me find what feels good in terms of how to apply the paint, what kind of colors I wanted to work with. So that was really the first step for me. But as I have been getting back into what I do think I am drawn to paint, which is portraits of beings, both animal and human, and I've been doing a lot more human portraits, I'm using the same sort of principles of trying to find what feels good to me in the process and bit by bit build up my painting practice around that. So that is why, honestly, I paint a lot of myself as a little kid. I paint my cat and I paint my partner because I love looking at my cat and I love looking at my partner. So these are things that are motivating to me. Um, I also work with these bright neon backgrounds because, I mean, quite frankly, I think they're just fun to me. I like the way they do with the painting, but a lot of this has just been built around what feels interesting and fun and exciting to my senses, to my hands, my eyes, all of it. So I'm starting with a sketch, and I used to not actually do this. I used to trace when I was painting in my old painting life. I traced the outlines of the animals I was painting, but I have been working. I actually thought that this really scared me to do the sketch. I didn't think I could do it. Um, Turns out I can. I don't know. I thought that I couldn't draw, even though I could paint. And it's not that I'm doing this quote perfectly, but I think I no longer feel an attachment to that. So I feel okay that my proportions are a little bit off. And it's actually even sort of interesting to see what sort of distortions I apply a little bit, where I exaggerate things and to kind of work with that rather than try to make it accurate. I, yeah, I kind of do these very sort of zoomed in portraits anyway, which sort of almost remind me a little bit of what cameras do to our faces. So there is probably a little bit of distortion in my sketches, or almost certainly, but they feel close enough to me that it's satisfying and it's been a good exercise. But that's one of the things that really scared me the most. And it's been a pleasant surprise to see that I can do it, I guess. So I am starting here with mixing the color for the eyes, and that is actually something I do that is not in the normal quote order of painting. Part of this is because I still don't have a lot of stamina to paint. Most of my paintings right now, I'm spending about an hour or an hour and a half max on them. I am completing them in one session because that's just what works for me right now. I don't have a lot of stamina to paint, and I also might not want to paint the same thing the next day. So just keeping my paintings complete within a short period is what has helped me. In comparison, I used to paint about 4 to 8 hours on a painting before. Um, and I'm starting with the eyes because I have the most energy at this point in the painting process, and it's the thing that I want to put the most energy into. That's a big reason. I think it's also that as soon as I paint the eyes, the painting really feels alive to me. And so it's more rewarding to paint it first. So, with all of that, I do the eyes first. And again, this is pretty abnormal, I think. A lot of how I've set up my process as well has been to try to make it as easy to get into the painting process, make the setup and cleanup as easy as possible, because that was another big barrier for me in the past year. So I leave out my palette. I partially clean my brushes and then I put them in the freezer, so I don't have to do them clean as intensely. I wear this weird purple shirt, which is my painting shirt, so I can worry less about getting paint on myself, because I really get in the flow and I sort of lose track of, like, I don't know, I get paint all over my hands, I'll put it that way. But yeah, essentially I've done a lot of things to try to make the entry and exit into painting as simple as possible to encourage me to do it. And one thing that I am working with on his eyes in particular is that anytime you're doing, I'm learning this as I'm working with the neon background, colors that are close to pink, so reds, oranges, pinks, um, look rather dull once they're on the neon background because of how vivid it is. So I was trying to do a sort of amber eye, and it was not looking as saturated and vivid as I wanted. So, one thing that I have been trying lately is essentially wiping out, um, putting some pigment on and then wiping it out so the glow of the neon shows through. A lot of kind of how I'm painting is related to the shapes. So I'm looking for the shape of the whites of the eyes. I'm not even worrying about exactly being correct proportionally, but just like, is the shape of the little sliver of highlighted white in the eye um, similar to what it looks like in his eye in the reference photo? I'm probably getting a little over. There's a couple things that I wasn't totally in love with about the whites of the eyes in particular. I probably overworked the eyes a little bit, which overworking is this sort of concept in painting where there's really a point where you can push your what you're doing too far and it just looks worse. And when you're trying to, kind of make it just so. Um, but I also, I didn't love the color of parts of the whites of the eye in the end. But you just kind of, part of what I'm trying to do is, okay, there's a certain point where I can't correct this without possibly making things worse. So let's just leave it. The midtones of the whites of the eyes I didn't really love. I liked the shadow and the highlight, but I kind of didn't have the midtone quite exactly as I wanted it. But the nice thing about this is, like, I'm really trying to go through the idea of volume of painting rather than worrying that each one is perfect. So I learn a lot each time I paint about what I would do differently the next time. So now I'm moving on to the lips, and you're going to see a similar thing where I promise you can't see my palette, but when I start to paint the lips, like, the color that it looks like on my palette is a really nice pink, and it just is not showing up how I hope on the neon background. I apologize as well for the camera angle and that you can't really see what I'm doing for some of this, especially when I'm getting up close on the eyes and lips. Um, I'll work on the camera angle next time, I guess. As you can see, I'm kind of, it's maybe a little hard to tell with where I'm standing, but I'm kind of wiping and reapplying and wiping and reapplying and just trying to get the lips where I want. I kind of ended up just wiping most of it off and defining the lips a little bit more through their highlight, than anything else. And in the end, I actually, I was really skeptical about the lips, but I ended up really liking them. You'll see in the end. They just kind of glow because of how much they actually are letting the neon show through. But lips have been a little bit of a struggle with the neon background. It's something that I'm still refining. And yeah, I guess I do the lips second as well because it also feels like a more focal point on the face that I want to spend a little bit more energy on. I sped up and slowed down this video, but more than half of the time that I spent on this painting was on the eyes and the lips. All right, so now we're finally on to the skin portion. So I do the shadows first, and one of the things that I'm trying to, again, sort of figure out is I'm working with like a purple shadow here. A lot of what I'm doing is playing with kind of what colors I want. And I've also been sort of trying to learn and think through some color theory about how I want to work with. I want to kind of invert some color rules a little bit with the neon, and sometimes I want to do like a warmer shadow and a cooler highlight, which is the inverse of normal. Um, I switched to a bigger brush on the shadows because that's actually, I don't know, I'm trying to work with bigger brushes. It makes you, I think part of it is it makes you be a little less fastidious and kind of commit to things. But I was not totally satisfied with this shadow portion. I first tried to wipe it out to have the purple show more through, but then you lose the brush strokes. Then I tried to thin it, but I thinned it too much, so it was getting a little streaky. So that's another area where I need to continue to refine how to use the paint and the various mediums that I can work with to get a little bit more of a transparent shadow that will still have the kind of brushstroke visibility that I want. Now I'm going on to the rest of the skin. I really do have been enjoying these very harsh shadows where there's kind of a really clear demarcation between the shadow and the light part of the skin. I just find them more satisfying to paint than things that are not lit as dramatically. You can see I'm kind of going back and I think I'm trying to clean up the dripping shadow a little bit. So here I mix a few different skin tones and I'm just sort of applying them where I see them in the face. I think there's some quote better practices about kind of painting planes of the face, which I do like with the dark shadows, but I kind of give myself I don't know. I don't know how I will continue to evolve on kind of the anatomy aspect and following the kind of quote best rules about how to create a lot of this about how to use the light and the shadow is about how it creates the three-dimensionality, which I think maybe the harsher shadows create inherently a little bit better. But yeah, I'm kind of just mixing the different skin tones in where I see them and allowing them to intermingle a little bit. I feel like I struggle a little bit more around the mouth and chin with the skin, especially because he often has some stubble. Um, yeah, there's probably some adjustments I would make on the highlights a little bit, maybe add some more on his forehead. And this painting it has ended up, if you compare it to the painting of me on the wall as a little kid, it kind of has a more like plastic look. And one of the things I see really interesting is, when you do the eyes and lips first, it almost makes it look a little bit sort of robotic. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is part of this is I don't really know what's going to come out at the end of my painting. I'm just going into the process and I'm making decisions about what I'm doing. That's again a lot about how do I sort of stay present in my body and my senses as I'm painting. How can the actual act of applying the paint, I be pleasurable and also confident. I mean, I used to, if you looked at my time lapses of my paintings before, I would just be painting something and then repainting it and repainting it and repainting it. And here I'm, I overwork things a little bit, but I'm largely committing to what I'm doing and putting the paint on and letting it stay, doing a lot more just diving in and seeing what comes out. And that's actually been just way more fulfilling. Here I'm doing his hair, which I love using the blue as the highlight in his hair. That just, yeah, I'm having fun with the colors. So again, the skin and hair were pretty quick, but this is what my painting process looks like a little bit. If you like this, let me know. If you have other questions, would love to hear them. Thanks so much for watching.